Welcome to the Strategy with Jason podcast. Tune in for everything you need to know to stay in the know regarding the automotive industry. Here's your host, Jason Harris.
All right, let's do this. Hey, what's going on, Podcast Nation? It is Jason Harris here, and thank you for joining me on another episode of the Drive Las Vegas edition. Today, I have a very special guest with me. I have Eric from Dealer Teamworks. Eric, what's going on, brother? How you doing?
Hey, Jason. Thanks for having me today. This is a beautiful day for a ride.
Thanks for coming to jam with me. So, Eric, for everybody out there watching and listening and maybe don't know who you are or kind of, how you got started in the industry, I love kicking off these podcasts with a little origin story. So, Eric, how did you get started in this crazy little world we call the automotive industry?
Yeah, well, way back when, call it another lifetime ago almost, I actually got started. I was a regional manager for AutoTrader magazines. Way back then. A lot of
You're not dating yourself or anything
no,
like that,
not
right?
at all. Real
Okay.
current stuff here. So, for those of you watching that don't know what that is, there used to be a magazine. Free little magazine, little rag that sat on the racks outside of convenience stores and stuff like that. So, I got to know, long story short on that, I got to know all the dealers in upstate New York.
Of course.
And I've always loved cars, obviously. So then, it was right about the time that they were launching AutoTrader.com.
Ah, okay.
So all of a sudden, over a 3-month window, all of the advertisers were cutting their budgets back.
Yeah.
And I got sent out to go ask, obviously, what's going on. Well, they started telling me, and it was classic, because back then, there was one computer in the stores, and they all shared it, or it was usually in the GM's office. And the GMs were saying, well, these two tall, good-looking guys in black suits came in and told me I had to move my money from print to this new thing called AutoTrader.com. And I was like, I know what's going on. They basically just cannibalized the business internally, shifted everything over, and they pulled all the print, and I started going to this. So it was the best part about it, Jason. I said to these guys, what is it? Can you show me? They're like, I don't even know how to pull it up. They don't even, and it was, back then, obviously, it was still AutoTrader.com, but they didn't even know how to get to it.
They didn't know how to get to it.
And they didn't even know what they were buying. So I saw the handwriting on the wall, and then I got into just helping. At first, I was like, well, let's make websites for car dealers.
Yeah.
Not knowing anything about the ecosystem. So we went, me and a friend from college, I set out to go help these dealers, and it turns out, obviously, they didn't need it because everything was already in place. Again, didn't know anything about the ecosystem. So then we started making websites for some other businesses. And then a couple years later, because I had already known all the dealers in Rochester.
Yep.
One of them that I had a real close relationship with, he calls me and says, hey, I need help with a new website for a new dealership we're going to start up. And fast forward a couple, say about 6 months, and it turned out that was Auction Direct USA, my first dealer group that I had joined.
Wow.
It's part of the corporate team.
Small world.
Yeah, and then fast forward again, another 5, 6, 7 years ahead, we had grown that into the largest independent used car dealership in the country.
Wow.
For several years running. It's still going strong today. Powerhouse in the used car segment. And they had stores, from New York down to Jacksonville, Florida. I did quite a bit of business from there. So then I wound up leaving that, and then did some work on my own, and then wound up actually opening up another smaller chain in Rochester with my former CEO from that group. Great guy. Asked me to join him on that. And that was right about the time that we started Dealer Teamwork.
Okay.
So we took a lot of the original ideas, from the manual activities the internet managers still face even today in some cases.
Yep.
Where they're not leveraging all of the available resources and marketing automation technology that's available to them. So we, for instance, we had 1,500 cars in stock, and we had payments that were being added to them, and there was a little bit of automation, but it's still a lot of manual activity to it, and it took forever. And it was the bane of my existence.
I remember having those big Excel sheets that, you'd go over to the column, you could adjust the interest rate, adjust the buyout, adjust the residual, and then you could set it up.
Yeah, so we wound up, again, we just wound up taking some of those best practices, put them all together, put our ideas together for the original formation of the idea, and we built our platform that we have today. We call it the MPOP. Nice. Merchandising, personalization, optimization platform. We like to joke it's a bunch of fancy terms. It just simply means it's an easy way to put your inventory feed in. The system will basically normalize that data, distribute it out. We like to say also create once, publish everywhere, COPE.
Yep.
So we wind up, again, leveraging the data, normalize it, push it out, syndicate it, and let the system drive the leads that way versus taking up valuable time. The dealers are doing what? Trying to sell cars.
100%. So we're trying to make it easy as possible.
Yeah.
Let's, you know what, since we are kind of on the topic of websites, let's go ahead and we'll start with websites. Still, to me, the first impression that a customer will ever have of a dealership is going to be their website. I'm happy to say that I would say in the last 5 years, I've seen a transition to not having a website and just checking off the box, but actually beginning to truly understand that this is my first impression. This is where that experience starts. But I'd love to kind of get your thoughts on, how websites are being dealt with now, and where do you think the future of websites is going to go?
Well, we saw that transition start to happen pre-COVID,
yep,
and well before COVID, with the bolt-ons with Roadster and all the digital retailing solutions. And at first it was that add it and they will come type of thing.
Yeah. And
I think there was that misnomer that a lot of the dealers were thinking, without necessarily the platforms pushing the narrative or pushing that positioning, that it was basically a marketing tool. You still got to drive traffic to the sites.
Yeah.
Yes, it helps converts it in a different format. However, a lot of it just simply replaced the contacts or the potential leads and conversions that they were already going to get. It just came in a different form.
Yeah.
And I've always said it too, and I think a lot of people would agree that it's basically trying to shove that square peg into a round hole. You've got a different experience. It doesn't always look the same. You can't truly optimize it all in terms of on-page optimization for SEO purposes, but it looks nice. I mean, for instance, Roadster platform, solid platform.
Yep.
It's excellent.
However, it's very UI generated. Like I want to use it. I want to play with it. I want to touch it.
They did a fantastic job with that. Where the disconnect is, though, is in terms of how are we actually tracking that versus the regular on-site activity through our GA.
Well, that's a really good point. I'm glad you brought it up because, I'm a fan of digital retailing. A lot of people seem to think I'm not, but I am. In fact, my own dealership participated in a variation of digital retailing way before it was even called digital retailing. But my concern is right now, in talking to a lot of these new digital retailing companies, is they've transitioned their messaging and the reporting, and they're acting like lead generation tools, and that's not what digital retailing is. But I'd love to get your thoughts.
No, I totally agree on that. I'll tell you a quick story on this. Way back when we had the Auction Direct site, auction was part of our name, and we were literally trying to mimic the eBay auction experience.
Yeah.
So we made a separate VDP experience where a buyer could actually bid on the car or just buy it now.
Sure.
However, this is back in late 2007, 2008.
Yeah.
Long time ago.
Well, that's about the time that we were doing. Our BDC, which at that point in time they just called the internet department because they just wanted to just encompass everything. We didn't ever all get named for it, right? We were drop shipping Corvettes or dualies all over the country. It was digital retailing. I tell people now that, our BDC had 2 dedicated F&I managers in the BDC, and they're like, I don't even have that now. It's just for some reason we got so focused on this lead generation, and we forgot that digital retailing is a process more than a widget.
So I actually remember we mocked up a page, published it live. I gave it to my son, who at the time was probably like 9 years old, 10 years old. He had his own eBay account. He had purchased things online for himself through his own eBay account. And I gave it to him because I always loved to have them play with it. And if they couldn't understand it, we had a problem.
Yes.
Guess what my son says? He said, why can't I just put the car into the shopping cart and buy it? I was at 9 years old, and that's when it clicked for me. It was like, holy crap, this is where it's going to be someday. I know it's going to go there. But again, the problem that exists is that tracking. So unless somebody has the cross-domain tracking set up, which they'll do, the web platforms will help them do that. But unfortunately, most people just don't know about it yet. So in terms of being able to track that activity and monitor it, but where I see it going, eventually we'll get a newer website experience that's even simpler. Just if anybody hasn't looked at it, just go try to buy a car on Tesla.com.
Yes.
You'll walk away with a car in like 7 minutes.
That's right.
And that's obviously where we're headed. And those type of experiences are great. It's taken a while to get to that point, but as the platforms start to mature, we saw that natural progression of expansion of digital retailing. Now we're starting to see that consolidation. With the Roadster acquisition, I'm sure other platforms will consolidate in, and then that disconnect will also be bridged, by the awareness of we need a lead driver, in terms of a marketing tactic to drive traffic into that conversion tool.
And it's a conversion tool. It's not a lead generation tool. But I think you kind of touched up on it a little bit. Talk about Tesla, right? Like what's super impressive with that is that the online purchase, I'm going to say purchase, not buying, because I feel there are many ways you can purchase. All right, like Tesla does one thing; they don't stick you into one way, right? But when I start that purchase process, that online process is an insanely smooth transition to the in-dealership process. We just quite haven't embraced it yet, because I hate to say it, but there are digital retailing companies out there that are marketing this as a lead gen tool, not a process tool.
The other part that's missing too is just the basic effort and understanding around the education that truly is needed. Yeah. Some dealers do a great job of it. They put that video about the express store right up in center. They make it simple. They focus on that, and then they bridge it over to the in-store staff, so everybody knows it. I've talked to dealers, Jason, where they don't even realize they have it on the site.
Oh my gosh!
Some of the staff
because their OEM, signed up for them, and they all got it all simultaneously. Yep.
So that's a big piece of it. And again, it'll take that natural progression, but over time, people will get it. And again, it's also that simplification of the entire experience, where the sites are just going to start to realize that you don't need all the extra fluff in there. Yeah. Like I've been a big proponent for years of just trimming and culling out the
less is more.
All the fat from the navigation menus.
Yes.
I bet you there's still dealers. I've seen some. As recently as even this week, I saw one at the conference this week. They still had 2018 pages, model pages.
I know
in their drop-down.
I've had these conversations with the marketing directors or internet managers or whatever you want to call them. They're like, yeah, but it's good SEO. I said, yeah, it doesn't even need the navigation for it still to be good SEO. Like, that navigation needs to be clean, needs to be easy, and it needs to be for the people right now.
I love that argument too, by the way, that it's good for SEO. If it's good for SEO, then you would probably already assume that you're doing good SEO.
Yep.
And having an older page like that is actually counter to good SEO.
Yeah.
It's like, sure, it might be getting good traffic. But I'll point out another one that I found just recently, and I actually had a couple great conversations with it, presented it in my session as well, was the topic of transactional optimization versus informational optimization.
Yes.
So this is the classic example I've been giving. So I did an audit on a site from they had a previous SEO provider, and they were creating content for the sake of creating content, because that's what we're supposed to do these days.
Yeah.
And the dealership was getting traffic from vague informational, media type, entertainment type of searches. Things like, where is Elvis's pink Cadillac was one of them.
Okay.
A lot of, there was one about the Steve McQueen's Mustang GT Bullet. That, what year was it, or what car did he drive? Another one was how to program a Ford key fob. And once you drill down into the secondary dimensions, you start to realize, all right, this dealer is on the East Coast, and they're actually getting traffic from West Coast states and cities, and they're bouncing at 95+% bounce rate. A couple of seconds on time, on page time, and it was helpful. I'm sure somebody, some of these terms are being searched 10, 15, 20,000 times a month.
Oh, sure.
They have a genuine question, and they can easily find it, but there's no conversion activity from it at all.
No.
And unfortunately, what the dealers are experiencing from the vendors, they get a report that just simply says, "Hey, we grew your organic search terms to, from X, from Y to X." Yeah. Without actually looking at what are the true outcomes that came from this. And I've been on a real big push to create the general awareness around that in terms of, what do you actually ask your SEO provider? What type of keywords are they? What type of pages are they associated? How old are these pages?
Yep.
And then ultimately, what's the outcome from that?
You think as an industry we would move past reports around just clicks.
Yeah.
You know, I am seeing a small shift, but still not big enough yet.
But
where agencies are really measuring true engagement, quality over quantity.
Yeah, exactly. You hit the nail on the head. And then even more so to the point is, you know, what about are you tracking what type of visitor as well? Just new and you're returning. Think of it like this: every dealer loves to have new visitors walk into their showroom that have never been there before. Same concept. It's your website. What are my new doing? You know, how many am I, you know, increasing new users? And on top of that, what are my returning visitors do?
Yes.
And a lot of dealers may not even realize that their returning visitors to their website, you know, are even stronger organic traffic, stay longer than their new. Yep. Obviously, you know, they're coming back to either check on the car again, you know, ultimately convert, things like that.
Well, you know what I think it comes down to is leadership.
Yeah.
You know, because look, you're not going to make changes like this unless you get full buy-in, you know, from your leadership, right?
And that's actually what my presentation was at Driving Sales on Monday.
Do you know if it's Terminal 1 or Terminal 3?
1.
Okay.
And then that presentation was literally the key metrics that marketing leaders, the leadership teams, need to know. You don't have to know how to execute the tactics, but you do need to understand, you know, what is at least the high level strategy.
Yeah.
And from that, what are the metrics from those strategies? What are you measuring?
Yeah.
Yeah, I used to call it back in the day product stacking. That's what the dealers would just write a check for literally every vendor that came in.
That's what you call it. I call it the stew. Right? Because like we try to make it taste as good as possible. So, you know, we'll sprinkle in a little bit of this widget, we'll throw in that CRM, and maybe we'll throw in a little trade-in widget over here, maybe a little SEO over there.
Or two different trade-in widgets.
Oh,
how about that?
Oh, how about two different CRMs?
Yeah, it's so common and prevalent. But then again, you miss out not only connecting those products to a uniform and consistent and manageable process, but ultimately what are those outcomes from that new widget or solution or platform? You know, they all have to go hand in hand.
Yep.
So it's so important. And again, I stress that the leaders that are managing this, sure, they may not have ever actually been in the trenches and doing it, but as leaders, you need to at least understand what are the goals, what you know, put it like this, even simpler. What are the daily activities that have to happen and have to be measured in order to ensure success?
Well, and
once you define
what
that,
a good leader should be doing.
Absolutely.
You know, I mean, look, we're only as good as how well we measure our efforts. You know, I'm not a huge sports fan, but I do love baseball.
Okay.
And I think the reason I love baseball is because I love the stats behind baseball. And all sports are the same. They still take it that far. It's just I connect with baseball because I think on the field I can see the strategy being played out in real time because it's just a little slower, you know. But it's like we measure every at-bat, every opportunity, and you know we're not always swinging for the fences.
Right.
And I feel like dealerships they're just always wanting to hit a home run, you know. So they don't think about all the little things that need to be kind of put into place from a process or a system, right, that's going to get them to home.
There's an interesting analogy that can be made as well from that, because if you think about it, baseball is actually the only sport where the defense has the ball most of the time.
Yeah. That's a really good one. I like that, right? Because that is kind of how we're playing.
Yeah.
That's how we're playing, and we have to be able to switch back and forth relatively quickly, right?
It's almost like, to that point, the dealers and the leaders need to understand how to defend themselves from the bad stuff. Just call it what it is. You know, defend yourself against that just by understanding what those metrics are. Now you're playing. You turn it around where you're playing defense, and you kind of go on the offense, and now you start to actually control it. Because believe me, the moment you turn the tables around to a vendor and you start asking the right questions, a couple things happen. You either get a different vendor, or you get a different response now, you know, from a vendor. You know, your weekly contact, you know, your monthly contact. You'll start to really see a difference in that, because a lot of the vendors, quite honestly, I hate to say it, they'll be lazy.
Oh yeah, they have no problem hitting the easy button as much as a dealership it will hit the easy button, right? I found, you know, when I was dealer principal, the best thing I could do with all of my vendors is to over-communicate my goals and objectives to them. Because I find there's something interesting that happens. There's a level of accountability that's automatically generated when you know something, right? So then my conversations I'd spend a lot more time not talking about what we have done, all right, but what are we going to do? What can you do as the vendor of this widget or that website or this CRM? What can you help me do right now to get me to these goal objectives? But I over communicate the crap out of it.
The smart vendors are doing that.
Yep.
You know, and if you have to get away from having that conversation where it starts off, hey, great news, Jason. Everything is going great with your campaign. I love it. It's going awesome. You should be seeing great. Because you say that to a dealer every single call, you know, any smart GM is, you know, worth their weight in gold is going to be like, well, why isn't it so great here, you know, inside? You could say that to the best, you know, to the biggest top-selling store of any brand in the country. You know, you ask them how sales are doing, they'll always tell you, well, we could use more. Yep. You know, so if I'm in that dealer's driver's seat, dealer principal or the GM, whoever's meeting with that vendor contact, I would want that vendor to be telling me all the things that are bad right now. Yeah. Not because of, you know, stuff that they've done, but just necessarily, here's how we can continuously improve this item, that item, this other item. You know, it's just where can we continuously improve? Because, you know, eventually, if I get a vendor that's for 6 months straight, it's just like, hey, it's great, everything's awesome, everything's wonderful. I'm gonna be like, well, why do I even need you anymore?
Yeah, no, see, like, 100%, I'm with you. Like, a good vendor, should be able to execute on what I hired them to execute on, but the value to that vendor should be giving should go beyond just, all right, I've executed what it is. I think the new expectation for customers is that not that we just meet the expectation, but we have to exceed that expectation. Right. And that's an easy way to exceed that expectation is look for where there's opportunities.
Then there's always a good opportunity. And what I've always strived, you know, especially whether I was on my own or now with dealer teamwork. Yeah. We have a specific niche and a specific lane that we operate within. What I always strive for, though, is within that relationship, the moment that dealer gets to the point in the relationship and the communication sharing and the engagement where they reach out and they're asking me, hey, you mind taking a look at this report from this other vendor?
Oh, yeah.
That's not.
I love that.
It could be fixed ops, or it could be chat. It could be just anything that they're doing. And they know that it's not our product. We're not going to help with that. But just the fact that they trust you enough to bring that. When you start becoming the recipient of that type of phone call, that's when that relationship has matured to a great point. And that's where I think everybody strives to. And I know people have had that. You've experienced it where they call you with that. Yep. That's when things are clicking. Yeah. Another thing on a side note, I've always strived for: take your relationship to the next level by doing one simple trick, and that's getting to the point where you know the names of your clients' kids. If you know their kids' names.
Well, look, I think any vendor out there that may be watching, listening, we do get, and dealers too, is that look, the ultimate goal should be to get to a relationship, right, where you can trust that your vendor has your best interest. That's where we all strive to get to. And it's also, the cool thing is I find that when we get to a place like that, that's also when the vendors and the dealers, they do the coolest things, right? Like when I know my dealers trust me and they call me up and they go, got an idea. And they know that an idea is only as good as how well we can execute it. So that's hence the reason they give me a call. They're like, help me execute this. What can we do, right? Like, that is so much fun.
I'll tell you a cool one too that happened, man. Took me by, just blew me away. Took me by surprise. And for the dealer actually did this to me. And this would be a move that I would try to do for a client, any client that gets to that point in the relationship or trying to get it to that point. I had happened to talk to this client on the day of my anniversary with my wife. Yep. And he actually asked me where I was going for dinner, if I was going out. And I said, yeah. And we had a nice little conversation. I actually told him where, he's from out of state even. I told him where it was, and he was like, oh, it sounds like a nice place. Is it near you, whatever. And I didn't think anything of it. Mm-hmm. When we went that night, when the bill came, it came with a card from the dealer. Yeah. He had already paid for the meal.
Isn't that awesome?
That's a total class act move.
Well, that's because the value that you provided them far exceeds the monetary check that they cut to you every single month. Like I had a few months back, I had COVID. All right, I was in the hospital for a little bit because I've had some chronic bronchitis issues. My lungs just weren't. It kicked me in the butt, right? Mm-hmm. And I was amazed how many of my clients reach out to me and they were calling me, anything you need, man. What do you need?
That's great.
Like, kids need help, family needs help. Like, I got flowers from my dealers. I was like,
that's nice.
I got flowers. But as vendors, it's such a fun and exciting place to connect to that, to get to that level. You know?
Yeah, and it's unfortunate how so many vendors miss that opportunity or just don't even see it.
Because that's not their intent. Their intent is to just provide a product or service, and that's it. And sometimes that's okay, I guess. Sometimes that's the Costco method. Like, I'm not expecting a whole lot when I go there. It's a transaction back and forth. But, good dealers know that it's relationship selling, and it's the same with vendors and dealers. And
obviously, the end result is that reputation as well. When Sean Stapleton, my partner, and I, we've always strive for just doing the right thing. Yeah. Building that relationship, strong communication, direct and honest, but building that trust with the client. That's how. That's honestly how we got by in the beginning, was just building that bond. Yeah. Because that's what you need, obviously, from that vendor dealer relationship status. To level it up, because it took a leap of faith for some of these dealers in the beginning. I can remember some of our earliest customers, they were like, oh, send me your website links, send me your sell sheets, sell me your case studies or testimonials. I was like, nope, don't have it, not yet, nothing yet. This is literally just saying, I got something good and I'm going to do the right thing for you. And the client literally just laughing and being like, yeah, you know what, I trust you. Let's take a shot.
That's great. And you know what though, I find that inside the dealership, that's also key. That's where you see it's where you see real leaders. I'm sure you've seen it. Over the last 18 or 20 months, you've seen the cream rise to the top. You've seen who the real operators are.
Weeded the bad out.
Yeah. Well, Eric, man, we've covered some really cool topics. For everybody out there that's watching and listening right now, who may want to connect with you and just kind of continue some of these conversations, what's the best way to do so?
Oh God, if you want to, just the easiest would be dealerteamwork.com. You can email me at eric@dealerteamwork.com as well. Just Google Dealer Teamwork, Google my name, Eric Miltsch, Google Sean Stapleton, look up James Klaus. Lots of ways. Hopefully a lot of people you
got a bunch of class acts over them. I'm not gonna lie to you, I really do.
No, they're great people, and that's what helps make the great culture that we have. It's not just obviously not just me, not just Sean. We've got the depth of the culture is incredible between our account managers, our search managers, our developers. We've got some people that, quite honestly, Jason, I would never on my own have the opportunity to work with. Between some of the executives that we've brought in that are helping make the transformation happen. I mean, we've got our CTO. He was one of the VPs of development at Oracle. Managed like 1,400.
I've heard that little company before.
Yeah, managed like 1,400 developers. It's like I wouldn't normally have an opportunity to work with that caliber of talent, and I'm just a little person in this industry, and trying to do the right thing. But to have the opportunity to work with these leaders, for instance, like Peter Bozen, for instance, he's our VP of OEM and business development. He was one of the co-owners of one of the top BMW stores in the country. And then he sold his dealership, came to work for us, and he's the reason why we are certified with BMW. And so to have the opportunity to work with great leaders like that in the industry with 20, 25, 35, 40 years experience as well, it's incredible.
Huge.
Huge. But yeah, thank you so much for
this has been a lot of fun.
The ride.
Thank you.
Thanks for great to see you. It was a great week in Vegas. So